Today on Central Illinois on the Record, we're sitting down with the Illinois State Rifle Association and the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence to talk about deadly shootings. Plus, 103 days and counting, the continued impact of operating without a budget. And the panel talks dysfunction in D.C. and who could be the next Speaker of the House.
Now, from your local election headquarters, this is Central Illinois on the Record.
Welcome to Central Illinois on the Record. I'm Paul Cicchini, and we start with Springfield, but not because of the budget. Instead, lawmakers from Peoria are shaking up the scene. Peoria City Councilman Ryan Spain says he's running for the State House. Spain made the announcement Friday that he's putting his hat in the ring for the 73rd District seat. A lifelong Peorian, Spain was elected to City Council in 2007, the youngest member in the history of the River City. The seat Spain is running for is held by David Leach. The Republican announced Thursday he would not run for re-election in 2016. Leach has served in the House since 1989. He is currently the longest-serving member of the Illinois House Republican Caucus and is the fifth most senior member of the State House. There's a new state senator in Central Illinois. Former Peoria Councilman Chuck Weaver has been sworn into the seat held by now Congressman Darren LaHood. Weaver resigned his seat Tuesday. He took his oath of office Thursday and told WMBD he has a plan for connecting with constituents.
I will be touring counties every Friday. What I'm going to do is sit down and listen, and we'll start coming up with solutions and what will happen in different areas.
The Senate's next scheduled session is October 20th. Shelters for abuse victims say they can't stay open without money from the state. Illinois has now gone 103 days without a budget, and the list of those impacted is continuing to grow. The 60 shelters across Illinois usually get about $18 million from Springfield. Since the new budget year started in July without a spending plan in place, shelters haven't received a dime in state funds. As a result, shelters have made cuts to staff and services, meaning victims of domestic abuse looking for help may have an even tougher road ahead.
We're dealing with victims. These are people that are hurting and scared and are in dangerous situations. That's not something that you close down lightly.
Meantime, advocates say they don't want to send the message to victims they shouldn't find help. If you're a victim of abuse, reach out. You're paying for 911 service, but the money isn't being paid to those who need it. 911 dispatch systems don't get state funding, but operate based on cell phone fees. The money is there, but has to pass through the state before being distributed. That has law enforcement concerned.
It is the heart of our 911 system in any county. When someone needs help, that's who they call first. Any drastic cuts in 911 is going to affect fire, it's going to affect law enforcement, and it's going to affect EMS.
Cell phone fees are collected by wireless companies and turned over to the Illinois Commerce Commission, which sends the money across the state. A new law will increase landline and wireless taxes to 87 cents in January. It will also give the state control over both funds. Child care advocates getting a chance to bring their calls for help to state lawmakers. Our Emily Fannin tells us about the cuts to child care and how its domino effect is hurting more than parents and providers.
Think about what we all receive from a job. Our dignity, our self-esteem. We learn how to learn, and it's really the foundation of our society.
Not only will the cuts to the Child Care Assistance Program hurt working parents, it's reducing the quality of the job market. Kayla Edwards is a regional manager at Express Employment. She helps find jobs for those who can and are able to work. But recently, she's had to send people away.
They've said, I'm sorry, I can't accept your assignment. I want to go to work, but I just can't afford to go to work.
Parents are forced to choose between going to work or taking care of their kids. Most parents would choose their kids, but end up taking welfare.
I don't believe in sitting home and receiving other benefits is helping our economy or really an individual.
Representative Jahan Gordon Booth says it doesn't make sense to take people out of work and put them on state aid.
So why not allow a program that has worked for 2 decades to continue to do so, to allow families to be off of welfare, working in the workplace.
The bill to reverse Rauner's changes to the Child Care Assistance Program is up for a vote in the House on October 20th. For nearly 20 years, the state has been giving big businesses big tax breaks, handing out more than $1 billion since 2001. The legislation has been proposed that would suspend the economic development for a growing economy tax credit program until a compromise is reached and a budget is passed. Also known as EDGE incentives, they're awarded to corporations to encourage a relocation to Illinois or to stay in the state. Senator Andy Manar says it's hard to justify giving corporations a break on their taxes while the state is closing facilities, threatening to lay off workers, and canceling services to the neediest.
Those things should be put on the same playing field, in the same discussion as public education, higher education, child care, health care spending, all of the things that are subject to the budget impasse today.
The legislation was filed Monday and will be assigned to the Senate when it reconvenes. The election to replace House Speaker John Boehner is being delayed. In a surprise move, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy announced Thursday he was pulling himself out of contention. Speaker Boehner had already pushed back the elections for Majority Leader and Majority Whip until after the House picked a speaker. Later in the show, our On the Record panel will take a closer look at the current controversy and weigh in on who could be the next person in charge. Still ahead, we're sitting down with the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence. But up next, we're sitting down with the head of the Illinois State Rifle Association. All right, welcome back. Joining the program, the Executive Director of the Illinois State Rifle Association, Richard Pearson. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
All right, so I want to use the community college shooting in Oregon a little over a week ago as kind of a jumping off point for a discussion, because every time there's a mass shooting in this country, there's a discussion about whether and the issue of gun violence can be resolved. Yeah, so what does your group do as the Illinois State Rifle Association? It's kind of an extension of the NRA. Is that correct?
Right, we're affiliated with the NRA, but we have our own education programs, we have our own lobbying programs, our own grassroots programs, so we are a statewide organization.
Do you think there's a misperception that the NRA or the Illinois State Rifle Association doesn't care about gun safety?
Absolutely. We would teach more gun safety than anyone else does. Last year we worked with gun safety for over 50,000 people in the state of Illinois. And so a lot of people talk about it. We actually do it.
Is there enough regulation to make sure that bad actors don't get guns?
Well, there certainly is in Illinois. We have mental health background checks in Illinois. We have, of course, the FOID card in Illinois. So all those things go together, and it's very difficult for a felon to buy a gun in Illinois. Most of the felons, if recent studies have shown, have bought them from relatives or on the black market, or swiped them, stole them.
Certainly some of that is very difficult, if not impossible, to prevent from happening. But there are polls out there, surveys very recently, that show 90% of Americans would support universal background checks, but it's something that the National Rifle Association has opposed, and seemingly as a result, lawmakers in Congress are opposed to. If 90% of the people can agree on that, why can't the Congress do so?
well, I don't know what Congress can agree on. I don't think they can agree on much these days, but anyway, so don't hold me responsible for Congress. But anyway,
I won't do that.
Anyway, in the long term, background checks seem to make little difference nationally, although we do have them in Illinois. If I sell a gun to you, I have to check to make sure you have a FOID card. I have to get an approval number from the state police. And so Illinois is kind of pioneering in that. And so far it hasn't been a problem by any means.
Well, I think some people would argue that maybe the laws in Illinois aren't working as well as intended, because there are also statistics that show people in some neighborhoods in Chicago are more likely to die from gun violence than even the deadliest and most dangerous countries around the world.
Well, you have to remember that the people who do that are not legal firearm owners, okay? We had a testimony from a detective in the city of Chicago, and he was asked by one of the state representatives, how many people have you arrested that are a legal gun owner that have committed a crime? And he said, well, none.
Richard Pearson, thank you very much. He is the executive director of the Illinois State Rifle Association, and you can see an extended version of this interview on our website, ciproud.com. Still ahead, House Republicans reeling after an election to pick a new speaker is postponed. The panel weighs in on what's next for the GOP caucus. But first, the other side of the gun debate. We put the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence on the record.
You're watching Central Illinois on the record.
Welcome back. This week, we also spoke with the executive director of the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence to get the group's reaction to the mass shooting in Oregon. I asked Colleen Daly to tell me exactly what her group does.
We are the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence. We are the oldest and largest statewide organization in the country working to stop the devastation caused by firearms. And we do this in a couple of ways. We do programs and we do policy. We're known mostly for our policy work. We do a lot of state policy work down in Springfield. We were the organization for many years fighting against concealed carry. After the Seventh Circuit decision, we were the organization trying to find a concealed carry law that we thought was respectful of the density in Northern Illinois, and then recognizing that downstate there's a lot more space and people might want to have more locations where they could carry a firearms.
You mentioned working in the Chicagoland area and read a headline that said people in some neighborhoods in Chicago are more likely to die from gun violence than people who live in some of the most dangerous countries on earth. What's your reaction to that?
Sadly, we've known this for a while. We see people getting shot and killed here in our city, a lot more than overseas fighting wars for us. And sadly, it's taking place every single day. So while it's a huge tragedy and our hearts go out to the families and the victims, in Oregon, we also recognize the fact that, we had one of the deadliest Septembers in Chicago in our history. So, it's something we need to talk about. It's something that we need to do everything we can to try and stop from taking place.
So is it fair to say that whatever's being done now isn't working?
Well, no, I think some things are working, but at the same time as we always can do more. The problem with this issue is there's not one, pardon the pun, silver bullet that's going to, solve the problem. There's lots of different things we can do. There's education, there's jobs, there's families, and there's just not one simple solution, but there are things we should do. And our theory is, you've got to try absolutely everything we can. If our policies save one life, then what we've done is working.
Go back to the shooting at Newtown, Sandy Hook Elementary, and a huge national outcry, obviously. Some lawmakers were moved on Capitol Hill to introduce legislation, but nothing was done. If nothing can be done when a classroom of children is killed, can anything be done?
Well, we said, after Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, when one of their colleagues is shot in the head, you would think that would make them act. 20 babies, you'd think that'd make them act. A church in Charleston. I'm not exactly sure, but when we have 93%, the latest poll that they had, at least that I saw this past weekend, 93% of Americans believe that we need background checks on every single gun sale. 93% of people don't agree on anything. We can't agree on apple pie versus cherry pie. So for that many people to say that, elected officials need to start listening.
All right, thanks again to Colleen Daly, the Executive Director of the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence, for joining the show. You can watch an extended interview with Daly at ciproud.com. All right, Donald Trump is grabbing headlines again while he sent a care package to Senator Marco Rubio. But first, no end to the dysfunction in D.C. The panel looks at House leadership as it postpones an election for new leadership.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
All right, welcome back. Joining the panel this week from WJBC Radio, Terry James and Marty Hobie, a government reporter with the Register-Mail. So Congress, right? A little bit of disarray, and let's take a step back. House Speaker John Boehner announces he's going to step down not just as Speaker, but from Congress, setting the stage for an election for House Speaker. Kevin McCarthy steps up. He appears to be the front-runner candidate for that position. And then on Thursday, he says, nope, it's not going to be me, as staunch conservatives mobilize against him. And on Friday morning, Paul Ryan announces that he is, or at least members of the Republican caucus say that he is going to step up and do it. He cancels weekend fundraisers because he's seemingly the only person who can unite the Republican Party. So that's where we are, at least as of today. No House Speaker. Can Republicans figure it out?
You know, what the public is seeing right now is disarray, and it's not what Congress needs. With their approval rating being pretty low, this doesn't help, and it brings uncertainty. And look, the Freedom Caucus is putting a lot of pressure right now on the Republican Party. They're a very influential group, and they're saying that we will only support the person you pick if they agree not to work with the U.S. Senate. And those types of groups are the problem here. And that's why this problem of disorganization is out there for all to see in the public.
Yeah, you mentioned the Freedom Caucus. Members like Justin Amash from Michigan and Raul Labrador, guys who mobilized on Thursday behind a Florida congressman, which really put a dent in the support for Kevin McCarthy's bid for the speakership.
Yes, a couple sources I've talked to have said that because of that endorsement, the Republicans might not have the 218 votes they need to pass the speaker, because they're not going to get any help from the Democrats to push their candidate through.
No, certainly historically that has not been the case, and I don't imagine any of that is going to change. So let's assume that we have 5 options, right? John Boehner stays on, would be one of them. Paul Ryan steps up, as it's suggested that and that he may. Of course, he still needs to get those votes. A temporary speaker is put in place, which is a possibility. Somebody like Klein in Minnesota is a name that's been floated out there. He's going to be retiring from Congress as well in the future, so he would be a temporary solution. A coalition speaker, which has been suggested by some centrist Democrats, that maybe in the middle, Republicans and Democrats can come together and say, hey, we'll have somebody here, also kind of a temporary solution to the problem. Or, because the Constitution allows it to be as such, somebody from outside of Congress could be a possibility. Marty, any favorites if we had to pick somebody outside of the House?
There was reports that Newt Gingrich was considering it, but I'm not sure.
Tongue-in-cheek maybe, right?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how realistic that is. I've heard other, not necessarily reports, but more almost jokes of Donald Trump considering a run for Speaker of the House. Right. I've spoken with a couple area congressmen and women about the issue, and while Democratic Congresswoman Sherry Bustos really did not have much to say other than she just hopes for bipartisan support and she's focusing on other issues, newly elected Congressman Darren LaHood did say whoever is selected, he wants to make sure they provide a clear roadmap that's, his quote was, proactive rather than reactive, in order to get things done in Congress, because that's probably the #1 complaint the general public has about Congress today, is that they simply can't get anything done.
Yeah, seemingly John Boehner, before he stepped down, wanted to set the stage by raising the debt ceiling, coming to possibly a road funding bill, funding the Export-Import Bank, and then, of course, December 11th, Congress runs into another issue where the funding, the continuing resolution that they put in place, runs out. So there are a lot of big issues on the table that John Boehner, wanted to tackle himself, and now it looks like he still may be doing that, paving the way for somebody possibly like Paul Ryan to come in and kind of clean up afterwards.
Yeah, and Paul Ryan is somebody that is likely to be the next speaker, but we'll see what happens. I found it interesting that Dick Durbin and I had a conversation last week, and he told me that John Boehner actually walked out of a meeting because he was tired of all the squabbling that was going on. And with this kind of disorganization, it's just something that the American public is not ready for. But, as you mentioned, the budget is a major concern. They're going to have to work with the Senate. They're going to have to work with Democrats. Otherwise, we're going to see another government shutdown.
Yeah, and possibly even worse than a government shutdown would be if the debt ceiling isn't raised and defaulting on America's debts. But I want to take a step back and talk about Paul Ryan again, somebody who was a very influential member of Congress on the Budget Committee. He's now the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, somebody who had no interest in the speakership, which has lately been compared to herding cats. And now it looks like he is the guy who's kind of forced into this position. John Boehner doesn't want to do it. Paul Ryan doesn't really want to do it, but now he seemingly has to do it.
And you're right, it's kind of the job nobody wants. But in my conversations again with Congressman LaHood, he said that this delay isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as it doesn't, cause a government shutdown, because it allows for time for other candidates to step up, as well as fully vet candidates. The candidates for the Speaker of the House aren't vetted like candidates for election of the general public, and this allows for that type of conversation, that type of research. I should also note, he noted, I asked him the difference between this situation and Illinois Speaker of the House Mike Madigan. He called the situation apples and oranges.
Oh, that's a very interesting take on it. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole issue plays out in the future, because obviously there are a lot of big issues on the table, and I think we'll have to get back together and talk about them in the future. Terry James from WJBC Radio, Marty Hobie from the Register Mail. All right, there are more than 2 months until Christmas, but a couple of presidential candidates are already in the giving spirit. How Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are jabbing their rivals, and accomplishments in the LGBT community on display, where you can see the legacy wall. All right, you now have a chance to see some achievements and life stories of members of the LGBT community. The Legacy Wall is in Springfield, the travel size of the Legacy Walk in Chicago. It has 125 stories of people from the LGBT community from all over the world, some dating back 4,000 years ago. The founder says he understands the hardships LGBT people have to face and hopes this wall will bring role models to communities. The display will be at the Illinois State Library until October 28th. Donald Trump sent a care package to Republican presidential rival Senator Marco Rubio. It included a 24-bottle case of Trump Ice natural spring water, which have Trump's face on them. Trump's campaign also sent Rubio 2 towels, a bumper sticker, and a note. A Trump campaign aide said they added the towels due to the Rubio sweating and called the gesture a light-hearted prank. Trump poked fun at Rubio following the last Republican presidential debate, saying he sweats a lot and downs a great deal of water. Trump wasn't the only candidate sending care packages to GOP rivals. Hillary Clinton also sending 14 Republicans a copy of her book, Hard Choices, along with a letter. It comes in response to the candidates questioning her record of accomplishments during their last debate. In the letter, Clinton tells the recipients to, quote, enjoy all 596 pages and closes with, quote, 15 candidates in the race, you've got enough people for a book club. That's going to do it for this edition of Central Illinois on the Record. You can stay in touch with us using social media, connect with WMBD and me on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag CIOTR. We'll see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of WMBD, WIZZ, or Nexstar Broadcasting Group.